following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So Ron Rivera stepped to the podium today, addressed the media, and he started off his press conference by notifying the media that two of our prominent safeties are going to be placed on IR now. He would not elaborate on the extent of the injuries. He would not elaborate on the length of their IR, stints. Right now, all we know is that they're being placed on IR. Is it the short term? Is it the long term? Is one of their seasons done? He would not get into that. But as far as we know right now, Derek Forrest, our starting free safety, is dealing with a shoulder injury. Again, would not get into the extent of the injury, would not get into the length of how long he would be out and the stint that he may potentially be on IR for. But he just said he was on IR with a shoulder injury. So it explains a lot of why we saw so much Percival Butler on Monday, because he was getting cooked. He was never in position. The first touchdown of the game, Percy Butler, poor eye discipline. Ron talked about that, but we all saw it, live when it happened, as to why DJ Moore was able to get open in that cover 2 shell. So we're definitely going to miss Derek Forrest, because we kept talking about the lack of playmaking with him this year versus last year, where he was a standout in that area, but we didn't see as many coverage busts on the back end with him back there. There was a level of comfort knowing he was going to at least do his job. May not make a play, but he was at least going to be where he was supposed to be when he was supposed to be there. Cannot necessarily say that about any of the young guys, Percival Butler or Quan Martin, who we expect to now have to be thrusted into more of a role with this injury. Speaking of which, Washington also lost another prominent safety, this time in the special teams realm. All-Pro Revo Jeremy Reeves being placed on IR as well due to a knee injury. Again, Ron would not get into the extent of the knee injury, would not talk about what IR he's being placed on, whether it's short-term or long-term. All he said is that they're going to assess the injuries further and find out if it is in fact a season-ending injury or if it is an IR short-term stint. But that's going to hurt. Our special teams have struggled mightily this year, and you're taking the best player off of that unit, a guy that was an all-pro last year and a Pro Bowler in Jeremy Reeves, off of that unit. And we've already struggled to get guys on the ground. We've been giving up big returns in the punt game in particular. And now taking Reeves off that unit weakens a unit that already hasn't been all that good this season to begin with. So two really big injuries at the same position. And as we know in this league, it's not how many injuries you have necessarily. Sometimes it is. They do accumulate. But a lot of times it's how many injuries you have at a specific position. That's what usually gets you. That's 2 injuries to the same position. And now we're going to see that depth. This is why you drafted all them safeties, right? This is why you went out and drafted Quan Martin in the 2nd round. This is why you drafted Percival Butler in the 4th round last year. Now let's see what these guys are all about. Can they come in and make an impact and show why the team had confidence in drafting them and putting them on the field? So far, the results have not been good for Percival Butler, but he's young, and this is going to be a golden opportunity for him to show what he's about. Meanwhile, for Quan Martin, he hasn't been on the field at all. Now he's probably going to be thrusted into the action. Let's see what he can do. So, we've been relatively healthy the first 5 weeks of the season. That is no longer the case. Ron also spoke about Fedarian Mathis and F.A. Obata, and he continues to be tight-lipped on them as well, as if they're not ready to come back or something. I don't really know the situation there. It's funny because Ron will tell you everything. He'll tell you game plan, shit that you shouldn't be telling, but when it comes to injuries, all of a sudden he's tight-lipped, doesn't want to speak on what they're going to do with this player or that player. I find it somewhat baffling, but nonetheless, F.A. Obata, Fedarian Mathis still haven't had their clock start yet. Maybe it will start this week, that 21-day window. And obviously they got to make a decision here shortly as to when they finally decide to activate them, because I do think you have a certain amount of time that you have to do that as well. But they haven't made that decision, or at least maybe they have made it and they just haven't decided to tell us yet. But we could use them. I don't know what the holdup. If those guys are healthy, or if one of them is healthy, we could use both of them, all right, or either one, right? So I don't really know if they're just not ready yet, or what the case may be. But he's continuing to be tight-lipped on both of those guys as well. So we go to in other news, and again, Ron spoke today, and he had a lot to say. None of it really resonates at this point with us. I think we're at wit's end with this entire regime and how things go every single year. I think it's the expectation now, right? Like, the season's not done, and this was the message last week when there was this overreaction as if we were, 3-9 and the season was dead, right? There's still plenty of football. It's the loss to me was a microcosm of a, regime with Ron as its focal point and JDR as his commander in chief, right? Like his lieutenant, his second in charge. And what that game to me signified is that, we've come to the end of that road. Because nothing seems to change. The more things change, the more they seem to stay the same with this group. Every year we know we're going to get off the slow starts. Not just in ball games, right? We can't seem to get off to a fast start to save our life. We've had one fast start this season, and that was Philadelphia, and we weren't able to hold on to that. But it felt good to lead a game at halftime. We generally aren't up at halftime. And so it felt good to go out and score the first touchdown of the game, score again on the second possession and be up, 7-0, and then 14-7, and then eventually 17-7. It felt good to be up because we're never leading in a game. We always start slow, but not just starting slow in games, we start slow in seasons. And that's been the theme with Ron, and you were hoping, I was at least, that this would be different. 2020, you start 1-5 and 2, eventually 2-7, right? Before you run off 4 in a row and you get to 6-7. 2021, you start 2-6. You start the season off 2-2 and then you lose 4 straight, right? Sound familiar? We were 2-0 this year, and now we're riding a 3-game losing streak. We were 2-2 in 2021, and then we lost 4 straight, and we were 2-6 at the bye after losing to Denver, a game that we had no business losing. Come off the bye and you're thinking we're going to get crushed by Tom Brady, the Super Bowl defending champions. We win that game, and then we managed to win 4 in a row and get to 6-6 before the season fell apart, right? Last year, same thing. You start 1-4. You win your first game of the season, then you lose 4 straight, right? You're 1-4. You lose a heartbreaker to Tennessee. You're thinking your season's done. You find a way to beat Chicago, one of the ugliest performances of the season, but it helps turn your season around. You win 6 out of 7. And you're 7-5 going into the first Giants game prior to the bye. We know what happens there. You get a tie, you come out of the bye, you lose 3 straight, your season ends up going down the toilet. That's where this season's heading again. This is why we're done now. Because this was supposed to be different. We started 2-0. We did the thing that we needed to do, which was, find a way to win the first 2, because the next 2, Eagles or Bills and Eagles, probably not going to win those games. If you're better this year, maybe you sneak one. We had a chance with Philadelphia. Let it slip through our fingers. But then you can't lose to Chicago. And this is the same shit, right? We're going to lose to Atlanta this week too, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like we got to get to 2-5 before we wake up. 2-6 before we finally magically have this epiphany and all of a sudden we start playing quality ball. But by then it's too late. You've dug yourself a hole, and all of that winning that you ultimately find yourself doing doesn't even amount to much, because you look up, you've won 4 in a row, but you're only 500. That's where it feels like we're heading right now. And John Keim asked a great question about, hey, you're 2-3 now. And in past years, it always feels like you guys got to get down to, 3, 4, 5 games under 500 before you finally wake the hell up and start playing good football. What do you do to try to stem the tide, to try to stop it right here at a 3-game skid before this thing balloons and snowballs into a 4 or 5-game losing streak? Because that's where it's heading. You lose to Atlanta, and we're going to talk about Atlanta, but that's a well-coached team. If they don't beat themselves, you're not going to beat them. They're the Tennessee Titans of the NFC. literally, because that's where Arthur Smith came from. But we got plenty of time to talk about that. I watched them play the Texans because I was doing some scouting over the weekend. We're going to talk about that here in a second. And what I saw is a fundamentally sound team. They do the little things correct. All the shit that we don't do, they do. And that's how you get beat in this league. That's why the Falcons are 3-2 right now. They've done the little things right. They're not talent-wise, that's not a great football team. They've got guys here and there, right? Guys that are difference makers at key positions offensively, but they're not a super talented roster, but they're coached well. They don't beat themselves. Their field goal kicker doesn't miss kicks. They do all the little things that you have to do in this league to find a way to win. They're the opposite of us, essentially. Okay, we beat ourselves. We don't do the little things correct. You know, our kicker misses timely kicks. They're the anti-Washington. So I see us losing again and dropping to 2-4. And then, you know, we look at the Giants. We're laughing at them. They probably beat us too. Who knows? And then after the Giants loss, that's when we wake up. We're 2-5. The season. It's not until we declare the season done that all of a sudden this team, like a phoenix, rises from the ashes. And so, you know, Ron had a bevy of questions, you know, aimed at him, you know, really trying to get to the core of what the problem is. What did they figure out? You know, this pseudo bye was supposed to give them a chance to do a lot of self-scouting, self-evaluation, kind of figure out if any moves needed to be made from you know, a starting standpoint, a roster standpoint, maybe some decisions coaching wise, maybe a philosophical approach that they've had in the first 5 weeks. Maybe we need to change this. And he touched on a little bit of everything, but in typical Ron fashion, you know, he said a lot with, you know, a lot of nothing, right? It's a lot of the same rhetoric we've heard over the years. We got to do the little things right. You know, it's a little thing here, a little thing there. Well, it's been a little thing here, a little thing there for 4 years now. So we're not trying to hear that shit anymore. You get away with that the first 2 years. We're not trying to hear that in year 4. That it's a little thing here, everything's correctable. We've been hearing that for the last 4 years. That everything's correctable, but yet we go through the same shit every year. We get off to slow starts every year. We lose to teams we have no business losing to every year. This is what we find ourselves doing every single year. So at this point, all that stuff falls on deaf ears. You know, there were only a couple of things that I listened to him talk about that. Because they asked him about the draft class. Everybody knows our draft class hasn't been productive. And when you look around the league and you look at other teams' rookies and the impact that they're having, and then you look at our guys who are barely playing, you know, like I said, Ron, he handled that draft in a manner that suggested he was going to be here for the long haul. He didn't conduct himself as a man, and I can respect that. You know, I can respect not having a knee-jerk reaction, but at the same time, the draft is meant to help you short-term and long-term, immediately and into the future. Your first 3 to 4 selections are supposed to help you immediately, immediate relief, right? That's like drinking, you know, Pepto-Bismol or taking Pepsid AC. I need that immediate relief, right? If you want that long-term fix, you got to make dietary changes, okay? But in the short term, because I effed up and ate something I wasn't supposed to, let me get that Pepsid AC. Let me get that immediate relief. That's what the first 3 to 4 picks in the draft is supposed to provide you. Immediate relief. Come in, help us at positions of need, and give us some production. The last 3 to 5 picks, however many you got, 10, 11 picks, the last 3 to 6, 7 picks, those are the guys that are developmental, right? Those are the guys that, hey, he may make the roster, he may not. If he doesn't, put him on the practice squad. We continue to work with him. Those types of guys, right? We're getting nothing out of our entire draft class. First, second, third round, none of it is being beneficial to us right now. And so, you know, he addressed that a little bit. They extended it, did the media out to the free agency class. You know, Cody Barton, Nick Gates, Andrew Wiley, and, you know, Ben Standing asked, these guys need to be better? You know, the draft class and the free agents. And, you know, of course, Ron threw a blanket over it. Everybody needs to be better. I mean, that's the easy way to answer. That's an easy way to not single anybody out. And he's not wrong. You know, everybody needs to be better. But those guys in particular need to be better. You know, we need more from the draft class. We need more And I always hate putting a lot on the plate of young guys. It's not their fault that they got drafted to a team that didn't have a plan for them. Okay? You draft Quan Martin in the second round, but you already had your safety position and you already had an idea of what you were going to do with Benjamin St. Juste because you drafted a first-round corner in Emmanuel Ford. So there was nowhere for him to play when they drafted him. Ron literally said today, we drafted Quan Martin as an insurance policy for Cam Curl. He got hurt last year, really hurt our defense. You can't draft an insurance policy for a safety. You can draft, like the Eagles did, an insurance policy for your quarterback in the second round. A guy that won't play, but you know because of the history of your quarterback who's been injured each of the last 3 years at the end of the season, you know that this guy's probably going to play, and it's an important position, so you can draft an insurance policy in the second round. Eagles fans were going nuts when they drafted Jalen Hurts because they didn't want to hear that insurance policy shit in the second round. Look how it turned out for him. You can't draft an insurance policy in the second round for a guy that isn't, like the Eagles did that with Cam Jurgens. They didn't know when their all-world center Jason Kelce was going to retire. So they were already prepping for that. He could have retired that year. He could have retired the next year. So they didn't know. They just wanted to be prepared whenever that time came. But it's a little bit different when we got holes on our roster. The Eagles they didn't have any definitive holes, so they could do that. It's a luxury pick. We're not in that position. We still need a home run threat at the running back position. We need a punt/kick returner. We need edge rushing depth. We need more help at tight end. We need an athletic tight end. We got so much shit we can draft. We need a game-changing linebacker. That's probably at the top of the damn list, along with a left tackle, a guard, right tackle. We need all that shit. And you drafting a backup safety who you have no intentions of playing if everybody's healthy in the second round? You think that's a sound decision? Again, make it make sense. So Ron talked about that. I think the biggest thing that he said was the development of Sam and how they feel about Sam through 5 games. And he's like, he's exceeded our expectations. Now, we've kind of expedited that process because we've had him throwing the ball way more than we wanted to. And like Ron said, when you're down in games, I thought Ron he stretched it a bit, to fit his narrative. Because we were only down 16-0 in the Buffalo game. He was stretching it to make it seem like, and I like the fact that Sam Fortier ain't let him off the hook like, I think it was Sam Fortier. Like, bro, you won't down in every game. Games you came out at the very beginning and was just firing. It's 0-0 and 8 out of your first 11 plays are passes. Like, let's not act like every game was Denver or every game was Chicago and you had to fire the rock. You were just doing that because that's what you were doing. Like, that you wanted to do that. And he was like, we'd like to be a little bit more balanced and take some of that off his plate, but he's exceeded our expectations. He's been really good. And obviously there's room for improvement, but he's done a lot of good things, and a lot of that is because we've had to throw it so much. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure out a way to be smarter. Like, it was crazy because we've been bitching and complaining about them running the football, needing to run it more. And then the game, that you really should have been targeting the secondary and looking to get the ball moving through the air, we come out and we running it. We ran it on a 2nd and 11. Like, what are we doing? On the second possession, and then you want to complain about not converting on the first 2 possessions of the game against the Bears because you calling stupid plays. Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? And I know the Bears haven't stopped the run, this, that, and the third. I don't care who you're playing. 2nd and 11 isn't a rundown. It's just not a rundown in the NFL anymore. What are we doing? What are you trying to get to 3rd and 8, which we didn't on that play? I think we got 1 yard and it was 3rd and 10. 2 yards, it was 3rd. What are you trying to accomplish on 2nd and 11 with a run? It just doesn't make sense. All year long, we've been coming out firing the thing, and on the first possession of the game, and I get it, because you had a 6-yard run to start, you had a 5-yard run, and then a 4-yard pass, and so you got into another situation where a run made sense. I don't like the run choice, but again, I just thought that there were things, and of course Ron is like, yeah, he wouldn't get into any changes roster-wise, starting-wise, philosophical approach, which he shouldn't get into all of that stuff. We know he's not firing anybody. And And I don't think he's rearranging any assignments, who's responsible for X, Y, and Z. But he better start making some changes. He better tighten some shit up because the clock's ticking, And we already know this group isn't going to be patient with them. They're going to give them an opportunity, and the opportunity is this year to figure it out. And if it doesn't look good through 13 games, when we hit that week 14 bye, Ron is gone. There was a tweet from Josina Anderson that said a lot of nothing, but the one thing in there that it said is that Josh Harris is inquiring from other owners around the league as to how the process works and does it benefit you to move on from your coach in season or not. So just the fact that he may be inquiring that from other owners to find out if getting a head start is imperative or not. But we talked about it. I talked about this on Friday, right? I talked about this on Thursday after the game. Like, there's no benefit to firing Ron right now. Firing JDR. JDR, if you still had Harris on the roster, Chris Harris, then it would make a ton of sense because he looked like a rock star. He looked like a guy that needed an opportunity to call plays. He's in Tennessee now. You don't have another guy on the roster that commands an opportunity to move on from Jack that might be innovative, that might come in here and switch the game up. So I don't really see, and everybody's like, it can't be any worse than Jack. Oh, yes, it can. Yes, it can get worse than Jack. Trust me, it can. But at the end of the day, man, Ron didn't say much that moved the needle for me. The only thing that he did acknowledge was that, yes, Sam is actually exceeding our expectations, and they just got to be better around Sam. He shouldn't be in a position where this offense is having to try to carry the team and win shootouts. That wasn't supposed to be the plan when we started a guy with one career start under his belt. This defense was supposed to allow him to come along at a casual, leisurely pace, right? And, at times if the defense was struggling, maybe the offense picks them up this week. But this wasn't supposed to be an every week thing where we're looking at the offense and saying, Sam, defense is struggling again. We need you, right? The man threw the ball 51 times in the Chicago game. 55 straight pass plays were called. That is insane. This defense has been atrocious. But let's take a trip around the NFC East. And then I want to also talk about your weekend because I thought this was a great opportunity. I don't know if a lot of you took advantage of it or not. I didn't say anything. I should have. It didn't dawn on me until after the fact that you should be watching football. Like, don't be so pissed off about the outcome of Washington's game that it stops you from scouting the rest of the league because a lot of you aren't really aware of what's going on around us. You're so fixated on Washington. You're so locked in on what this team is doing on a weekly basis that you don't get a chance to really watch the rest of the league. This was a golden opportunity. Atlanta was on. Great opportunity to watch the Falcons take on the Houston Texans and see what we were dealing with next. Great opportunity to kind of see what we are missing in Washington. As I always tell you in the playoffs, hey, these are the good teams in the league. Look at them, see what they're doing, and see where we can improve. So it was an opportunity to do that. See some of the areas where we're actually strong at. A lot of you guys think this guy isn't that good, that guy isn't that good, and you look around the league and you say, hey, shit, ours isn't that bad if this is what the rest of the league looks like. But just a quick trip around the NFC East. Obviously, we laid an egg on Thursday night. We set the tempo for the week by not getting it done, and it permeated to the rest of the division except for Philadelphia. They seem to be immune to all of the foolishness. Everybody else in the division is succumbing to, bad losses, getting their asses kicked on primetime television, not scoring points. All of the shit that's ailing the division, the Eagles are immune to it. So the Giants played at 1 o'clock against the Dolphins. We knew they weren't going to win the game. But it's just this continued issue offensively. They kicked 3 field goals in the game offensively. They scored 1 touchdown. That was defensively on a 102-yard. Literally, that stopped the game from probably being a 40-burger. If they score that touchdown on that 2-minute warning right before the half, it's already I think it was a 14-3 game at the time. They go in 21-3. And I think the Dolphins got the ball after half, if I'm not mistaken. That it was going to get out of control. But Tua, he struggled in the game. threw 2 picks and kept the Giants in the game. But their offense is just so bad. That offensive line is just so bad, and Daniel Jones is just so bad that they didn't stand a chance, even with the mistakes the Dolphins were making. The Dolphins made a bunch of mistakes, but they were still able to win 31-16. And the big story from that game with the Giants in particular is the health of Daniel Jones. He left that game with a neck injury. I don't think it's serious, but anytime we're talking about a neck, who knows? So he got knocked out of that game. Tyrod Taylor had to finish up. And I think they got sacked another 7 or 8 times in that game. Their line is a mess. You think our line is bad? Yeah, right. The Giants' line is a sieve right now. And then you go to the Eagles, who played in the 4 o'clock hour against the Rams on the road. And the Rams were game for much of this ball game. For much of that contest, they were hanging in, but they had their opportunities. Stafford just missed too many opportunities. Cooper Kupp was back. Puka Nacua had a drop on a big 3rd down early in the game when the Eagles were having trouble stopping the Rams. And it seemed like from that point forward, the Eagles kind of settled in. They had a big drive before half that I thought really allowed them to take control of the ball game. They were really just hunting for a field goal. And then the Rams did everything in their power to make sure that it was a touchdown instead. And they got that touchdown. And they really never looked back. They won that game 23-14. Did the Eagles put the clamps down second half defensively on the Rams? And like I said, I just thought they missed some opportunities. Tutu Atwell running up the seam for a touchdown. Stafford misses him. You got one-on-one with Cooper Kupp in coverage, and Stafford throws a lob job, and Cooper Kupp is looking over the wrong shoulder and tries to just you can tell that was his first game back. So there were opportunities that they just missed in the game, but the Eagles get it done, and they remain undefeated. They're 5-0, and again, they seem to be immune to all the other shit that goes on in this division. Speaking of which, Dallas on Sunday Night Football felt like a big game. On the road, 3-1 Dallas at 4-0 San Francisco. They brought out all the big guns. Jerry Rice, Emmitt Smith, T.O. did the intro. It just felt big. They're bringing up all the Super Bowl wins and the rivalry that existed in the 90s. And, the Cowboys have lost to the 49ers each of the last 2 years in the playoffs. So there's a lot there. And it just felt big. And then it felt like by the time we got to the second quarter, we felt like this 49ers team is just better than Dallas. And they literally exerted their will over the Cowboys. And Dak Prescott after the game, 42-10 was the final score. 49ers took their starters out with 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So essentially, they got the entire fourth quarter off. I mean, that's as embarrassing as it gets. Dak Prescott said, we were overwhelmed. And he said, we've had a lot of tough losses in my career, but he said this one was probably the most, embarrassing. This was the most humiliating and humbling. I think the word was humbling. This is the most humbling loss I've ever had in my career, Dak Prescott said. And, Chris Collinsworth, we kid and we joke about him all the time, but he said something that I think is very true. And he said, one thing about players is they're very prideful. They don't like being embarrassed. And there's no worse feeling than getting embarrassed on national television. And I think that's why Dak felt that way. I think that's why the outcry for the Washington players is nothing worse. Like I told you, you get your ass whooped at 1 o'clock as 6 games are going on simultaneously. Not everybody's paying attention. After the fact, they may see it, but they didn't watch it happen, right? In real time. It's not the same. It's worse when you're the only show in town, everybody's watching, and this is the product you put on the field. So they got to pick up the pieces, do the Cowboys. They're now 3-2 after the utter destruction that took place in Santa Clara on Sunday night. And now the Eagles are running away with the division. Dallas doesn't look as good. We're 1 game behind them, because we feel like that's one of the wild card teams that you're staring at is Dallas. But we got to take care of business. And the confidence is very low right now that that's what's going to happen in Washington. So hopefully you took a look at the rest of the league, right? And got a chance to see what everybody else is talking about, what everybody else looks like. You think we're bad and we're this and we're that. Look around the league at some of these other teams. And not to make yourself feel better, but just as a comparison. Hey, where do we really stack up? What does our tight end group look like in comparison to this team or that team or the rest of the league for that matter? Same with the wide receiver group. Same with the offensive line. Linebackers, it's abundantly clear. We need help. I'm watching linebacker play across the league, and that shit is 1,000% better than the shit we putting on the field and have since Ron and company have gotten here. It's been a steady diet of John Bostic, David Mayo, Cody Barton. This is the shit we've been trotting out on the field. Cole Holcomb, obviously, and Jamin Davis, but it's been a steady diet of these dudes that for other teams in the league, they wouldn't even be on the field. So it's really frustrating. But I digress. We're back, and it's another week. You flush the Bears game now. We move on to the Atlanta Falcons on the road, and you see if you can pick yourself up industrial. I don't like where we sit right now. I don't like where we are as a football team. It'll be interesting to hear the players, hear from the coordinators. I expect Jack to keep it buttoned up, close to the vest, not say much, and I think there'll be less of a laughing, ha-ha, kiki and Jack now, and I think you'll get more of the stone-faced, serious, one sentence answer Jack, especially if it isn't something that he needs to elaborate on. And Jack's already keeping a tight, presser. Usually his don't go 10 minutes. I expect them shits to be around 7 minutes now. Jack is getting in and out. See what EB has to say about the last game. And then I want to hear from the players. That's really what I care about the most. I want to hear where they are mentally. This little break getting away was good for them. And I want to see if they come back locked in and ready to turn. Because I could tell that Eagles week, they were going to play well. That's why I was so confident. Because I listened to them speak and I knew where they were mentally. I didn't get that sense, but it was a quick turnaround Thursday night. I thought they were kind of still dragging from that Eagles layover. I thought there was a little bit of a carryover effect there. So now this little break that they got, see if they come back rejuvenated, refreshed, and ready to take on a Falcons team that is very beatable. But if we don't come with the right state of mind, we'll get work from them too. So I think Wednesday is when we'll start to hear from the players, and that'll be pretty telling. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. You know what it is. Post up, take command. Until next time, you guys, take care, God bless, and have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.